Well, welcome everyone. This is our fourth lesson in our Achieving with Integrity project, and we're looking at the concept of moral action, moral character, responding to the question, how do I do it? Developing students' skill and will. And you're going to recognize shortly here that my colleague, Jason Stevens, is not with us today. He's flying somewhere over the continental United States, and leaving San Francisco, he's heading back to Connecticut for some dissertation hearings that he was supposed to participate in, as well as some exciting news that he just relayed to me. And I'm not sure of all the logistics yet, but apparently he's picking up his new fiancée. He's got his proposal. I don't know how you do an international proposal, but he did, and it was accepted, and so it's exciting news for Jason. But yeah, he'll be in Connecticut late this evening. But we're starting with our lesson 4, and our overview and the recording today again will be available both through the PowerPoint and also with the recording of this webinar as we've had over the course of our other 3 lessons. And so we're going to review a little bit about our third lesson, the moral commitment, and then go in and discuss our new content area of performance character and understanding 2 dimensions of it, the skill and the will of helping our students develop the ability to act on the judgments and commitments we've talked about in earlier lessons. So our objectives again today are to continue to be clear about our process and moral commitment as a review, looking back at our work with moral judgment as well. But then to go forward today to look at how you might help students with this moral and performance. We're using a vocabulary of Thomas Lacona and his colleague Matt Davidson. Tom is a famous scholar in the area of student character formation. So our behavioral objective today is actually to create these lessons where the students will be able to practice a moral and performance character through your class activities. And obviously we hope to continue to keep your enthusiasm for the project. So from the last webinar, you might recall we were talking about how can I be responsible, moving from the second lesson of moral judgment of any ethical person into the third lesson where the responsibility comes clearly to me and me as an individual. We move from our, and I'm going to use these acronyms that we're hoping you're finding as helpful content for these lessons, the EDMA activity with the ethical decision making to the VIPA, the values identification activity. And so we're looking at prioritizing our moral values in last week's VIPA lesson, as well as identifying and preventing rationalizations. So the moral judgment, as we talked about, coming from our EDMA exercise, leading to the moral commitment, again in review, and we recognize that we need to keep our commitments by prioritizing the values, and we're also hoping that by exploring and having the students recognize rationalizations that their moral commitment can be sustained. So being fair and honest would be some of the values we've talked about, and we've addressed in some of our follow-up team meetings that I've been in expressing some concern that we're, particularly for the students, we've used the vocabulary of intuitive ethics and moral principles, and then values, recognizing, and hopefully we're seeing that these are all synonymous terms, that we're still looking at this sixth set of values that Jonathan Haidt has identified, being fair and honest being some of the most important ones. And then resisting these neutralizers to act on our values is identifying the rationalizations. And we had shared with you last week, and we'll look at some of these review slides here, with the goal of moving beyond personal interest and recognizing social conventions can help, but sometimes fall short, but moving to the domain and this lens of moral principles to help us. Last week, in terms of, or 2 weeks ago, in terms of recognizing how some of these ability of students to rationalize, we identified, and this became the content of our lesson for last week, was recognizing and hoping that you could share with your students what is broadly recognized, and we're quoting from Albert Bandura's work, these different forms of rationalization, external blame, minimizing of wrong, and this information then came to you in the last PowerPoint as well as in the appendix for the VIPA exercise, and these other two classifications of denying a crime or a victim exists or some form of moral justification. So this is some of the content we're hoping that your students would recognize and then be able to use this to expose rationalizations to academic dishonesty. And thus, our VIPA, we love our little acronyms, right? And this is the Values Identification and Prioritization Activity. The first step, bringing over from the EDMA decision from what a group, a good ethical person might decide, to what am I going to do, describing that action, and then checking to see if that action in step 2 has any rationalizations. They may not have chosen a particular decision from their EDMA that is in support of moral principles, or they may have chosen something that they had some fig leaf of moral principles but all kinds of rationalizations with it, and thus the content of them to be able to recognize what those rationalizations are and expose possible choices to that. And then finally in step 3, that they're confirming what values or goals they want to uphold, and which conversely means, and Jason pointed this out a couple weeks ago, there could be, and we do recognize that some other value could be lost or set aside. In the case of a friend wanting me to help him cheat in an exam or an assignment, we may prioritize fairness, recognizing that our loyalty to our friend then becomes a lesser priority, and so we're prioritizing 2 of Cite's values, but we're saying that fairness, justice, honesty may be something that is superior in this case to what we might do just to sustain the loyalty to a friend. So for today, we're looking at our moving into our 4th lesson here with the idea of moral behavior and exercises that strengthen the ability for students and their moral formation, their ego strength, as the psychologists would call it, and also maybe a non-moral skill that is necessary to help accomplish the goal. So looking back at our big picture on this, we have our core questions, and for each of these, we hope that you've been recognizing in our first 3 lessons, within our lesson templates, the content that we've been trying to develop. Under lesson 1 in the moral awareness, the content was Cite's set of values, set of moral principles that we built on then in the moral judgment, recognizing from the personal conventional to moral principle decision to make a moral judgment. 2 weeks ago then we talked about the moral commitment in the VIPA, and how, again, prioritizing values and exposing rationalizations. Today, we're going to be looking at the ability to actually act on this moral action, and how can I develop a performance character to act on this, as well as the moral will to act on it. So how do I do it? What are the skills that are needed to do what's right? And let's look at some of the suggestions here in our lesson, and in the corresponding template that you'll receive. You'll see the acronym this week we're going to be using is SWAP, and I'll introduce that in a minute. But the idea is to go from this moral commitment. I've identified a behavior, I've identified the values, and we want to get to the action. And we're saying that and we're borrowing again from the work of Lacona and Davidson to recognize these two mechanisms. There are others. The research does describe other mechanisms. These are the ones we feel we can develop within your classrooms within these lessons. And the performance character skill and the moral character will to get to the moral action that we're seeking. And that moral will, again, we're bringing in this Height's work with the character vocabulary as well. So developing students' character, how can we do this? How can we develop the performance and moral character in the classroom, and specifically how can we help students develop and deploy these skills, practice them, needed to do the right thing? And so this is the discussion for today's work. And again, referring back to Lacona and Davidson, we want to look at some of the keys that they've recognized in their research. Some of these keys for the students to be involved in their own self-study, and we can help them with that, and the lesson template that we're providing in SWAP will help the students to look at their own self-assessment and goal setting as a part of this goal. Other study, and what are good or bad examples from other people, and are there public examples that might help a student to see an exemplary performance, and or it could be, I suppose, a negative example that would help me be encouraged to stay away from that. And how does the community support it? And that's, of course, the bigger aspect of all of our project, is to encourage the community, at least of your classroom, and then as colleagues build some collegial support at your school, then that community can expand in the support of it. So right into the heart of this outline, and today's SWAP, the Skills and Will for Action Protocol, are just going to include 3 steps today, and this is what you'll see in the lesson template, and some of the content is going to be determined by your choices. You'll see under the academic skills, there's a lot of different skills that could be represented here in terms of helping a student to act with positive character, and we're not going to tell you which of these we would insist on you doing. These are going to be optional things, but recognizing that within the total package of a student, they're going to be able to have these skills to act on, to act with character. So to start with our SWAP, again, we're referring back to the previous activity with the VIPA, the Values Identification Protocol activity, and the process, and that the student would end up with that activity having chosen an action and the values that support it. Now we're asking, what are the skills that are going to help me get this done? And in the template, you'll see that we'll be defining and asking for you to help the kids identify what are the skills needed, and with the possibility, obviously the very real possibility, that they need some help recognizing how to do this right. And we're just giving some examples here. There's clearly more that could be addressed, but under academic skills, we have this technical word, chunking, right? And that's just the idea of taking a big project and putting it into small pieces. It's scheduling. It's making mini deadlines, and it's a skill. It's a skill set that for a larger project or any paper, that the students recognize how they can take this, particularly if it's a paper that's going to require references and resources. What are the deadlines you as a teacher could impose, but what are the things that in preparing kids for college, what are the steps that they can see from clearly identifying the question of the paper, clearly identifying resources, getting an annotated bibliography, which would include obviously appropriate citation and all those kind of things. But just the nature of the scheduling, putting it into a whatever electronic or calendar device they might have, do your kids recognize that as an important function of their moral action? More often than not, what we find is that young people will say that cheating has occurred because they ran out of time, they didn't have time to do it right, and so this becomes a significant non-moral skill that can help the moral action actually take place. So we're encouraging some discussion between you and your students about how practiced and how much mastery they have to be able to actually move this skill forward. A second area, and there's several processes under letter B, this is again is one of the areas where we're going to give you the right to say, yeah, I'd like to focus on one or the other of these. Paraphrasing, it's a complicated skill and something that teachers can help students practice. This is not going to be something that we're going to be able to test on in our pre-post, but we do again recognize that a number of skill sets can be interjected into this, non-moral skill sets, and how well and how expert, what mastery level do you think your students have on being able to take a 500-word essay and paraphrasing it into something of 50 words or less. Similarly, just the act of quoting and how is it cited, and just the whole area of citation in general, and what resources do the young people have to go to when they have questions. Again, these are the academic skills that we're addressing. A third is just simply the ability to go for help, and either to ask teachers or go online, and where do the students know that they can get support when they know there's an academic skill needed and it's not something that they have readily available to them. Step 11 for our swap is deploying social skills, or a set of skills that will help them do the right thing. Now I'm going to tell a story which I've told you before, but I'm going to be bragging on our West Haven contingent again, where so this is just one example of a social skill demonstrated where their academic integrity committee hosted a pledge drive. So a couple things happened here. Within their pledge drive, they were encouraging this individual moral will to align with the pledge. But an unanticipated consequence occurred in that during an exam, as the story was relayed to me by Mark Consorti, who's part of this team, was that a teacher, after a pledge drive, saw a student soliciting a classmate for help on the exam. And the teacher was getting up and moving to the solicitation, going to make some intervention, when the kid who was solicited raised his arm just discreetly, wasn't trying to attract attention to the teacher, but raised his arm, pointed to his academic integrity bracelet. And this was the bracelet the kids would get if they would say and sign the pledge. And so that was the resistance skill, or the social skill, that this young man used to resist the entreaty of his classmate to help him cheat. Of course, we were thrilled that we had created this opportunity, right? We recognized the value of it. But we're also recognizing that not everybody's got an academic integrity bracelet on, and are there other skills, and we're going to cite here that students should be able to understand how to reframe a request for unpermitted help and save the dignity of the other student, and not, as one of our students said in our survey, not commit social suicide by being too self-righteous or insinuating things that didn't want to be said. So reframing is a social skill. Saying no, and how one could do that. Your students need to be able to learn, and I think we cited this one in our introduction meetings, that Nancy Reagan's Just Say No process 20, 30 years ago was a drug resistance project, and some people criticize it for its overly simplistic manner, but it was a strategy, a social skill, and we're going to ask you to encourage your young people to develop some way to say no, to reframe, verbally or non-verbally. The last step that we're asking for you to do within the template is this exercise, the will, and by strengthening that, what are the strategies? And the young people might come up with others. One of the strategies we're suggesting is they develop their own academic integrity pledge, a personal one. We looked at 2 weeks ago, the school-wide commitments and signing, but if the young people were to develop their own personal one and then be able to stay strong with that by thinking about it, reflecting on it, having their confidence in it by understanding other moral exemplars that might have practiced it. So let's look at these each. in modestly more detail as our time has available to us. But how do I go ahead and do this? If we're an academic skill, we're going to focus here on just some prevention things that are both things you can do as teachers, but again, we're highlighting this require process steps, series of due dates, topic, outline, first draft, peer review, final draft, requiring an annotated bibliography. These are all things that the young people themselves could recognize as benefiting them as a prevention strategy to act and do the good, as opposed to delaying and allowing time to be the factor that makes them think they have to go ahead and cheat. So the highlight here is, again, the process steps. We'd like you, as one of the options of content, is to make sure your students understand how they can break these large projects up. And when we talk about a large project, I would suggest any paper, no matter how long a duration it might be, can be broken up into smaller parts. And I think it's helpful for the kids to recognize that from the idea to drafting to maybe some peer review might help them. So setting up mini deadlines, again, with the idea we want to support our moral principles category. And so if students are going to be setting these things up, you can create just the idea or an assignment and ask, as part of the mini deadlines, what are your deadlines? That could be a question or an activity within this particular project that you could help develop this skill, this academic skill, to create mini deadlines. The other would be, again, your choice on this one. We're not going to insist on these first several, and as you'll see in the template, your choice to pick one of several of them, and how students might be able to practice paraphrasing to avoid just the how easy it is to copy and paste without citation, but also to help them take longer narratives and make them shorter, be able to explain them. It helps. It's a terrific learning device for them to understand the concepts as well. The other area we said under our first academic skills set was recognizing proper citation and how to do it. Now, obviously, this all depends on what citation methodology your school might be claiming. It's great, though, for the kids to recognize different schools, and sometimes we find, even in high schools, where different departments of a high school, the social studies department might request AMA, and then the science department is requesting APA, and so that the kids understand, and sometimes it just seems to them, and me too, as just arbitrary decisions on people's part, but how and where resources can be found to cite with different standards, so that you can give them, and maybe even on your own teacher website, have links or examples. It can be a terrific help to them as part of their academic skills. So here are just some more APA examples for citing with multiple authors and internet with no author, that kind of thing. But the point is, where do they find this information, and that it's accessible and they know where to capture it. So what about the social skills? So we looked at our first thing of SWAP with the non-moral academic skill, and now here are some of the non-moral social skills, and we talked about the reframing. So giving some examples to them, and then asking them to put some examples that are meaningful and they could hear themselves saying. They can hear themselves identifying. So here's the setting prior to an exam or work due date. When there is time that you could help, and someone's asking for your student's solicitation to cheat, and the kid's reframe can be, I'd be happy to work with you. When would you like to get together? And so they're not giving it away. If they're staying within the bounds of appropriate collaboration, there's just a reframe. The kid doesn't have to necessarily throw their friend under the bus and say, what are you asking me to do? You're asking me to cheat on this, as much as they're helping them reframe and get the thing done properly. Now, here's the problem, obviously. We're in the hallway, and the the kid's asking me for help within the next 3 minutes before the bell rings. And can it be a reframe? I'm sorry, there's no time to talk about it now, but I'd be happy to help, in the future. That one sounds hollow to me. Or just, sorry, I can't help right now. I mean, is that a reframe? Pretty much. It's not quite the same as a refusal statement, which would point out specifically, and this would take obviously some moral courage on the part of the kids and a certain amount of discretion to say, sorry, I don't want to compromise my integrity or yours, or I know on the example in the template it goes on to say something like, I know we're friends enough that I can have trust that this isn't going to hurt our friendship, but you can value that I value my own integrity. Whatever the refusal statement is, do the kids have it? Do they have it accessible to them? We're helping them to practice this step of our 4-component model. They've developed their awareness, they've made a judgment, made a commitment to it. Now how do they act on it? They don't have these skills. They could fall back to lower principles. So again, we can ask students, keeping in mind the idea that we're seeking the higher moral principles, to give them a case, give them a situation. In the template, we ask for you to build on a VIPA activity that you've already completed with them, and then look at how possibility of some skill communication set of reframing or refusal, if it's appropriate to the VIPA, to give them an activity to work on. And then the last area we talked about was this psychological ego strength that would help them resist the temptations and just to stay strong with their commitment. And we're referring back to a summary by Davidson and Matt Davidson, again, colleague of Tom McCona. When here's another set of decision pathways that I've seen in other publications, but Matt's got the recent summary of it, where you're asking the kids, okay, I'm making this decision, I've made my commitment, and now I need to stick with it, and look at all the things that this might help me to stick with my moral decision. And is there the golden rule test? The golden rule needs to be expanded beyond just the peer helping you, right? It's got to be expanded to other friends, even the teacher, your family name, that kind of thing. A fairness test, truth test, conscious test. So Davidson et al. Here have given a list of things to try to reinforce the idea that the higher ethical path and the moral principle path would be a better way to remain committed. And that can lead to personal statements and or, as this example of a strategy where one of our school teams promoted this personal ethical commitment by advertising young people who had stuck and published their own integrity statements. And so this young lady, who is one of the cross-country runners, and I think you've seen this slide from us before, but she had her own little integrity statement here: winning isn't everything, it's how, and you ran the race, and obviously a famous knockoff there of what many athletes have commented on in the past. But the point being, students making a commitment, making a personal commitment, and how can we translate that to our young people? Well, we can ask them to write their own integrity statement, and this could be quite personalized. It doesn't have to be as generic as some of the school statements that see that I neither have given or offered assistance on this particular project. But this could be a statement where the young person is putting in their own words, and this is a self-study, a reflection study for them to decide that this is an important concept to them to help reinforce their choice for moral action. So this is one of the activities that's included in our template, and we're encouraging you to work with your students. So this is the standard outline of our template, and Jason and I wanted to highlight the idea that we believe and we hope that templates aren't daunting. We're hoping you recognize that templates are simply documents that can help you personalize the setting materials, the goals and objectives, while there's places where we're saying, please keep this element, you could add others, or the instructional activities. The instructional activities we're asking in each of the templates, right, would include, in our first one, the AMAP, and I'm just going to refer to the our abbreviations, but that was our awareness activity, and that's the content we would like your students to be aware of as they're completing lesson 1. The EDMA for the moral judgment, and that's the ethical decision-making pathway. So that's the content that we want your instructional activity to form around. The VIPA from lesson 3, and this time the SWAP. So we got 3 steps as part of the SWAP for our lesson 4, and this is helping the students identify the skills and will to act on their character choice. And then the assessments, again, the SWAP appendix that's on the template is one of the assessment forms, just to see and recognize the students understand it. But again, we're following our same 4 Roman numerals here that we're hoping make the lesson development easier for you and useful for you to cut and paste and place into the templates the specific activities that you might have in mind. So with that, I'm going to go ahead now and open the microphones for everyone, and see if we have any questions or comments for the good of our 4th webinar. So any comments anyone like to make? Identify yourself and then go ahead and make your comment.
David, sorry I missed, what was the 4th key in the good and smart schools slide? You had self-study, other study, public performance, and what was the 4th one?
And you know, you'll get all these back in the links that I'll set out, right. But the 4th one was the community support.
Okay, thanks.
That was the sense of community support for this, and that you're building a community of students as well as adult colleagues that would be supporting the whole enterprise of achieving with integrity. Any other comment or question?
Well, I like the integrity and action checklist. To really, it's a lot of different ways to prompt the students to think about what they're doing beyond just the simple urgency of the specific matter that's tempting them to do the wrong thing.
Sure, and I'll build on that to recognize that in lesson 3 we shared with you 10 reasons not to cheat. So specifically 10 reasons. That's another document that the students can become aware of to reinforce this idea that achieving with integrity has sound reasoning behind it. Any other questions, folks? Comments? Well, I'm grateful again for the collaboration. I'm not so naive to think that I did such an excellent job. There's no questions at all, but you can communicate with email. And anyone want to make a suggestion before I go to our last slide?
You're trying to get us to be inspired here.
Well, just a little, just get the juices flowing, a little participation. Well, here we go. This is, did I cut somebody off? I'm sorry.
I'm typing in a message. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually using headphones because I'm in a room where there's something else going on. So I'm typing in a message right now.
Okay.
So it'll be there in a second.
While I'm waiting.
I'll send the first part.
Oh, here it is. Here it is.
So if you want to mute me so you don't get the disturbance of the noise behind me.
It's not so bad.
Okay.
I'm wondering if the students' feedback, if anyone's cited not having enough time because of working to support families.
Yeah. Some of my students have discussed that with me.
That there's pushback on the integrity issue because of the pressure to succeed?
No, not having enough time to study because they're working to support families.
Oh, yes. Okay, I got it. Yeah, of course. Yes, I mean, in terms of our own research, that's another huge, and whether it's work or whether it's extracurricular, activities. That's one of the areas of pressure that we see within our young people, and thus it becomes even more important that they become quite adept at scheduling their work. Otherwise, a lot of this stuff does come crashing in on them, and then they feel like their only out is to take shortcuts. Very fair observation. Well, barring other questions or comments, again, we're encouraging the use, and I really suggest that you try one of the templates going back to lesson 1 and developing an AMAP lesson. Shoot that to me so we can have some dialogue about it, and be prior to us getting to our final lesson session, which is going to again put all of these lessons together, and that's going to be our 5th webinar on Monday, May 20th. You'll get your invitation, your GoToMeeting invitation for that. But again, we're just so pleased for your collaboration and want to just keep our momentum going. And as you have questions or you're not seeing the resources that you're hoping to see, please email me that, okay? And let's fix whatever resource issue you might have. One last chance for questions before we sign off. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to getting back together on the 20th. And I've got a couple school teams that I'm still following up with for our team meetings, and you know who you are. So we'll get that worked out and do that follow-up, okay? So thanks again. Enjoy the balance of this fantastic spring day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
I'm in time to walk through the station. Stretch my legs.